Hi everyone, so welcome to our session today. You are in the right place. I'm Catherine from Pathway CTM. So thank you everyone for logging in nice and early and on time. And thanks for joining us today. As always, it's great to see familiar names. So we really appreciate you guys using your time wisely, during the current situation and making most of our sessions. Before I go on to the agenda today, I just want to chat to you about how you guys can communicate throughout the session today. So some of you that have been in our sessions before will know, so a few of you have been chatting in the chat box, so please do type away when we ask you guys questions or for some feedback at all throughout the session. Please do use that here. And we also have a Q&A box, which you can ask us questions at any point throughout the session. So no question is a silly question. Do use this opportunity to ask those questions that you might have. And we might ask them throughout the session, or we will have a designated Q&A time at the end, so we will answer them and hopefully we can get through them all today. If you do want to speak to us directly, you will have the opportunity to raise your hand. So if you don't want to type out your question, just raise your hand and we can unmute you and let you speak. So do feel free to do that. So welcome to our second in the series for our NHS session today, focusing on nursing and midwifery opportunities within the NHS. So some of you might have been on our session last week where we were chatting to Rob, who has joined us again today, but we're also joined by Jill, who I will intro to you shortly. So we shouldn't keep you too long today, 45 minutes. And as I said, please do ask any question that you might like, because now is the opportunity to do so. So we're really lucky to be joined by the NHS every week for the month of May. So do make the most of the opportunity to find out all about their great roles that they have and how you can get into it. And most importantly, it's your chance to ask those questions directly to the employer. So do make the most of it. Right, so I would like to hand over. So Rob, it'd be great if you could give us a quick intro for those of you perhaps weren't on the session last week.
Yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to the webinar. So my name's Rob Brooks. I work for a part of the NHS called Health Education England. I specifically cover the east of England, but I'm part of a national team that cover the whole country. And we are, in a nutshell, we're the part of the NHS that is responsible for supporting all of the health organisations with their staff development and training, and also their sort of talent supply, if you like. So we do a lot of work on supporting the universities to make sure that the training is correct for people like doctors, nurses, midwives, allied health professionals, and we do a lot of coordination work around supporting hospital trusts to bring in the trainee doctors or the junior doctors or student nurses. And one of the big things that we do at the moment is supporting all of the NHS organisations across the country with their apprenticeship agenda, and that's where my role sits.
Great, thanks Rob. And we also have a special guest, Jill. So Jill, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Hello there, yes, my name's Jill Blackman-Cross. I'm the Learning Environment Lead for the Nursing Academy, who support nurse associates and registered degree nurse apprentices throughout their journey to become qualified nurse associates and registered nurses. So that is my role, but it's been a little bit of a journey getting into that role, but I will probably tell you about that a bit later anyway.
Yeah, great. And Jill and Rob, perhaps you might want to interject here, but it would be great, Jill, if you could just give a sort of top line overview on the roles within the NHS in terms of nursing and midwifery.
Would you like me to start with the nursing first of all? Yes. Okay. Well, basically, once you're a qualified nurse, there are so many options that you can actually go down. You start off, once you've qualified, you'll be a band 5 nurse. And from there, the world basically is, as they say, is your oyster, because you can be a hospital nurse, you can be a community nurse, but within all of those, there's so many specialities that you can choose, and you can go in so many different directions. Even as a band 5, you begin to get experience, and you can learn to have more specialities that you sort of get under your belt. And before you know it, there are so many options, and obviously it's coming up on the screen now, but there are so many options that you can do as a level 5, sort of a band 5 nurse, where you can just, you can work in the acute sector, you can work within surgical, medical ward, you can work in rehab, rapid, or discharge teams, you can work on the oncology ward and gain your experience there. You can work on the paediatric ward if you want to do paediatric nursing. There are so many ranges of options that you can actually go for, that actually you can just build on. So you're starting off, as a band 5 nurse, but there are so many areas that you can progress to within both the community and within the hospital as well. Now, obviously in the community, you have other sort of areas that you can go. You can be a community nurse, and then from being a community nurse, you can go on to be a district nurse. And then again, you can become a manager of a district nurse. So you can progress very, very quickly throughout the NHS if that's what you want to do. Or if you want to stay at band 5, you can stay at band 5 and be more on the grassroots level, so where you're dealing more hands to hand, sort of going to see patients in their homes. There are many, many options, as I said, within the NHS in the community as well. I worked as a midwife and a health visitor, and I will tell you about it a bit later as well. But obviously, as a health visitor, which is the specialist role, you then go up to band 6, and then you're working with children. So there's many, many different options. Do you want to talk about midwifery as well?
Yeah, that's great. Actually, before you come on to midwifery, Rob, you might know this answer. I guess in terms of the requirements for students to do the level 5, do you know the specific requirements?
Yeah, so it depends on the training provider, and it depends on which level 5 you want to do. So it's not the easiest thing to necessarily articulate. So for the nursing associate apprenticeship, so if you want to become a trainee nursing associate and then qualify as a registered nursing associate, for the most part you would need to have English and maths at a 4 or above or equivalent. If you're old like me, it would be an A to C grade, or equivalent. So you can also have things like functional skills at level 2, or or other equivalents as well. That's as an entry requirement. Some HEIs like you to have a level 3 qualification, so that equivalent to an A level. But in some cases, if for some of our experienced staff, they'll accept significant work experience in lieu of that qualification. What I would say though, with all apprenticeships really, the real key is make sure your English and maths, make sure you work hard to get your English and maths grades, because although it's not impossible to get through an apprenticeship program without them, it does just make life so much easier. I don't know whether Jill would agree.
Absolutely. We work with our academic provider, who actually undertakes all the work with us, is the Open University, and their prerequisite is that you have the qualifications that you say. And those that have come in, it's very hard to do your course and to do what you're doing, as in like academic work and then practical work when you're doing your nursing, in whatever field you're doing it in, and then having to do your functional skills, English and maths. It becomes a real challenge. So absolutely get your English and maths under your belt, so you've got it, and therefore you can just present your tickets, your certificates, and actually say, I'm competent in that. So it just takes that stress away.
That's great. Thanks, Jill. It'd be great now to move over to midwifery.
Well, I'm a bit of old school, I'm afraid, with the midwifery, because I did my nursing, and I was going to discuss that later, but I did my nursing and then spent 6 months on a postnatal ward as a staff nurse before I actually started my degree in nursing. And it was an 18-month top-up course basically to that. And I have to say, within midwifery, it is, again, you have got so many things that you can do. I wasn't direct entry. Some people go in via the direct entry route where they haven't done the nursing, and I think that is more the chosen route these days. But I actually did my adult nursing beforehand, then went straight on to do my midwifery. And it's one of those courses that is very, very intense. But when you actually qualify, you can go down so many different routes. You can work in the community, you can work within a hospital environment. And again, your progression can be really, really quick if you want to. You could be a bereavement midwife, you could be an infant feed lead midwife. There's so many things that you can do within that one role, because there's so many diversions that you can go down. And again, I think, you know, the actual progression route is always there for you to take if you want it. Great.
And I think that naturally comes on to your story, Jill. I think it would be great to hear your background and how you got to where you are within the NHS. You know, was that by going to university, or it'd be great to hear how you started out in the NHS.
Okay. Again, I was a bit of a late starter, so I've been in the NHS now 20 years. I was a pharmacy technician beforehand, so I had a really good understanding of pharmacology and everything else, which I have to say has been a great benefit in my nursing and midwifery, because it's something that underpins my knowledge and really helps me. I basically started as a nurse. I did my 3-year nursing qualification at Canterbury University. And from there, as an adult nurse, and then from there I went on to do my midwifery. As I said, within 6 months I worked as a staff nurse, and then went straight on, and then I did my midwifery for 18 months and went straight out into obviously sort of big caseload, you know, sort of working on the ward and everything else. But initially it was acute placements where I actually worked in the acute. You never knew what you were going to have. I'll tell you something, you went on that ward, especially if you're on delivery suite, and you never knew what you were going to face. So it was a really, really varied role. You know, it was a very exciting, very stressful, but very rewarding at the end of it. So it was, you know, it's a lovely role to go down to. If that's what you want to do, really sort of look into it and maybe shadow a midwife or something if you can. And then obviously I worked as a midwife for about 8 years, and I worked within the actual core midwifery on the wards, on the postnatal, antenatal, and obviously the delivery suite. From there I went out into the community, and that was a very exciting time, I have to say, because you are an autonomous practitioner, so you're working very independently and going out and doing home births and making sure that sort of obviously the mothers are fine and afterwards, and sort of breastfeeding is going okay, and that everything is going as it should be. So baby is actually thriving, mum's thriving as well, because it's not just the baby we look at the whole family. So from there I went on and actually got promoted, and I became a Band 7 delivery suite coordinator. So I ran a very, very busy, very dynamic delivery suite in Farnborough Hospital. Stayed there for a little while, but it was too far for me to live. Where I worked and where I lived was too far. So I basically sort of decided to go back to my previous role. And I really, really loved that. Eventually, I decided that with my qualifications and my love of children and development, I would then go in to work as a health visitor. So I then undertook at university another year as a degree course called Specialist Community Public Health Nursing, which took me down the route of health visiting. And that, again, it's a Band 6 role, and it's a very demanding course. It's a very intense course for a year, but when you've done it, you're very glad it's over, but you know that you've actually achieved an awful lot, because it was really an intense role. And you work within the Healthy Child Programme. You're looking at all the babies and the mothers and seeing how they're progressing, looking at mental health, looking at safeguarding, looking at how you know, the babies are developing. So you do development checks. You're looking at how they're feeding as well. So you're looking at their whole route of breastfeeding, you know, sort of bottle feeding, all that weaning, all the situations that, you know, sort of are natural to progress within a child's lifetime. So, you know, any child from 0 to 5, we were there supporting mums, families and children as well, and of siblings and everything. So a very busy time, but a very rewarding job as well. And especially with the safeguarding, we made sure that we were looking to protect the children that we actually looked after. From there, sorry
to interrupt, I think, did someone raise their hand? Something had come up. I just want to check that I didn't miss that. Perhaps it was an accident, not to worry if not. No problem. Actually, Jill, it's great to hear, you know, a prime example of how you can transition within different areas within the NHS. But I guess take you back right from the start. Did you always know that you wanted to go down that certain route, and what led you there, I guess?
I started off, I was actually going to be a teacher, and I managed to fail one of my A levels stupidly. So I didn't become a teacher in the end. So I then thought, what shall I do? So I decided to become a nurse. And I think I just wasn't right for it at that particular time. So I sort of probably stayed in there about 5 months, and then I made that conscious decision that it wasn't right for me at that particular time. So I then stepped back and thought, this is something I might consider in the long term. In between that, I had my son, and then I then went down and did my pharmacy technician course. So I was a pharmacy technician, and that was really, really good. As I said, really beneficial to me now, and obviously in my past nursing career, because it underpins my knowledge of sort of what clinically of what I do. So I didn't actually start off, I have to say, but then I sort of progressed, and then I got to about 35, 40, and I thought, I need to do something that I really, really want to do. I want to actually do something good and make people better. It was almost like I wanted to make things right. So I you know, when you are a nurse, you always want to make everybody better, and unfortunately you can't always at the time, but sometimes, you know, that is our innate feeling that we have. We actually want to make things better. So I then applied for my nursing, and then went straight down to actually start my nursing, you know, on the adult side.
That's great. And actually, yeah, speaking to a few students, you know, they're debating whether they do go straight directly into midwifery or nursing. So I guess for those students who are trying to make that decision now, what advice would you give to them in terms of, you know, how they go about making that decision?
I think it's a very personal decision. I think I would say, I would recommend that what they do is they probably go and work, if they can work as a healthcare assistant, maybe on a postnatal ward somewhere, or actually go onto a general ward and just get some experience. So, but before you actually apply for something, you really know what you're wanting to get into, because otherwise you tend to be going to it a bit blind. And I think sometimes you have to be in that right state of mind, be it, you know, it's maturity, isn't it? And actually knowing what you want to do. And sometimes acknowledging if you did start it, actually it might not be the right time, and step back from it. I think personally for me, I definitely wanted to be an adult nurse, and I felt the adult nurse route was the best one for me. So that's what I chose to do. But then I knew deep down I actually wanted to be a midwife. So that was I had to get that basic qualification, because I knew I could choose anything from that basic qualification. But my choice was obviously going down the road of midwifery. But, you know, you have many, many choices. And I felt having an adult nursing qualification as well. You know, if you want to go to Australia, excuse me, if you want to go to Australia, you know, the UK qualification is very well thought of. And I think if you've got an adult qualification as well, I think it's even, you know, more of a positive. Excuse me, I'm going to cough.
No, fine. Rob, you were nodding your head there. Do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would sort of echo what Jill's saying. It's often also, if you go into a hospital or an employer in general as a healthcare assistant, or more of an entry-level role, you might find that you've got access to more opportunities to develop than you would from outside. A lot of trusts will offer their sort of higher level and degree level apprenticeships to internal staff first, as a sort of an engagement tool, but also to reward loyalty a little bit. It's a bit, because potentially there is quite a big cost implication on a NHS organisation to train individuals as a nurse or a nursing associate through an apprenticeship. Some of the trusts are a little bit nervous about offering lots of those opportunities outside to people that they don't know whether they'll actually stay in the profession. Whereas potentially if they've got a healthcare assistant who's been in the organisation for 3 years, they've got a little bit more assurance that that individual wants to stay in that health profession.
So as Jill, I guess, thanks Rob, as you were saying, you know, it's getting that experience, because first and foremost, you know, making sure that is that, you know, exactly what you want to do, and if you can handle it, and also, as Rob was saying, so then you're making the contacts and you're building up that network to then help you in the future. So that's great. And I guess, guys, you know, by you being on this session today, I don't know if both of yourselves, Rob and Jill, if you're both on LinkedIn. But you know, use your connections now. If not, but you know, it's great that you guys are joining, and I just want to see if there are any questions at this stage. I think we've had a few that Rob has been able to answer, which is great. But yeah, guys, any questions before we head on?
Can I just say something? Obviously, I think if you are, as Rob was saying, if you are working as a healthcare assistant, or you know, in whatever form, in whatever place, it's also incredibly useful at your interview and for your application. And I think if you've got that opportunity to write down what you've achieved, where you've done it, and know what you're going into, you know, you're going to be leaps ahead of everybody when we're actually sifting through the hundreds and hundreds of application forms, because you're knowing what you're actually going to want to do. You're not being naive at all. You know, it gives you a really good head start, I'm afraid. You know, sort of, absolutely.
Great. We've got a great question from Becky. She says, how hard would it be to swap from a uni course of one onto the other? So for example, if she was on nursing but then wanted to swap halfway through to midwifery, how hard would that be, and is that possible, I guess?
I can't speak from the university side, I'm afraid. Do you know that, Rob?
No, I don't. I assume it depends on the university. I wouldn't want to speak for all universities.
No.
So, yeah, it's difficult. I think it depends. There's so many different sort of credit transfer considerations. I mean, sometimes it's even difficult for us to support people who've got a foundation degree from one university to go on and do the nursing degree elsewhere, because they don't always recognise the same learning. So your best bet is to have conversations individually with the HEI that you're studying with.
But it does happen. A friend, you know, I've known people who've decided after a year that they actually want to go straight on to do something else, whether it be midwifery or come off midwifery and go to adult nursing, you know, vice versa. So it does happen, but I think it's on an individual basis, definitely.
Great, thanks. And I think this one's for you, Rob. If you have a single award CTEC in health and social care, is that okay to get into nursing?
So I don't know whether that one is for me. So I'm not sure what the CTEC stands for. Jill, do you know what CTEC stands for?
I'm shaking my head voraciously here. No, I don't.
I'm guessing it's a type of qualification, is what I'm guessing. And again, my interpretation of that question is that okay for the entry requirements for a nursing degree? That's how I'm interpreting that qualification. And again, I think a lot of the time you're going to have to speak to the HEI or the university that you're looking to study with, because they will all have slightly different interpretations of what you need to go in, and they will also potentially take into account other factors like work experience.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. Sorry for putting you on.
No, that's all right.
But thank you though. Great. And Tiffany asked if it's possible to get Rob's email at the end of the webinar. Or guys, if there's anything that you want us to ask Rob, we can do that for you. So we'll sort that out. No problem. I wonder, oh, we've got another one that's just come through. An anonymous attendee, which is absolutely fine. Hello, I am wanting to go into children's nursing. Can I do an apprenticeship in this, or is this just through the university route? Also, can I do an adult nursing course and then go into pediatric nursing? So I guess let's cover the first question there. So they want to go into children's nursing, you know, does it have to be through the apprenticeship, or can they do this through the university route?
They can do both routes. So there are paediatric nursing apprenticeships that you can do. It's a very specific pathway within nursing degrees. So there's definitely opportunities there apprenticeship-wise. But yeah, you could also do that specifically as a university degree, as far as I'm aware.
Great. And also then, in terms, yeah, once they've done that adult nursing course, are they then able to go into and be a paediatric nurse? Jill, I don't know if you can.
I don't know currently. As I said, because we're in the community and our academic provider is different, I can't give you the direct answer to that. But I would say, historically, people will be able to do the adult nursing, and then they'll be able to do like a top up that would actually just cover that. So, you know, you've got a really good ground in your adult nursing, and then you do like a year, 18 months top up to become a paediatric nurse as well. It's really good to be dual trained as well. You know, if you've actually got both those qualifications, again, if you want to have a fantastic career somewhere else, you know, in the world, you know, if you're a dual trained nurse, you've got many options that you can actually undertake. And also, I think things like health visiting, if you're dual trained as well, you know, that again will really help you.
So yeah, what I'm hearing then is, you know, it is worth really committing to the training, because it will help you in the future if you are wanting to go
definitely.
Great. We've got one here from an anonymous attendee, and they say, hi, I'm currently doing my first year of A-levels, and I know this is something I want to do. So I wanted to know whether there's any work experience or part-time job opportunities that you can tell me about and that I can apply for during this pandemic. Good question, and there are lots of students asking for, you know, any extra work experience and things that they can be doing through this time. I guess I just want to quickly add on to that, you know, for the fact that you're on this webinar using your own time, that is great. So, you know, get that on your CV, because that shows that you're committed and dedicated to the industry. And Jill and Rob, do you have anything to add on to that?
I would say that it's always worth contacting different trusts. I don't know where this person is living, but I would definitely say, you know, Kent Community Trust, that there may be volunteer areas that they can go down. There may be something that they could be helping with. Obviously, there's certain criteria that have to make, and have to actually undertake, sort of like DBSs and all those bits and pieces. But I think at the end of the day, there must be a number of areas that they can go down and work, generally as probably as a volunteer. So they're going to get that experience. And I think now, if they're going to do their experience in this particular time, what a valuable experience it is, because there's so many things going on, you know, looking at leadership styles, looking at, you know, all sort of like supply issues, and actually looking at the stress of all the, you know, the staff as well, and seeing what is going on. So I think have a look, contact any trust, whether it's an acute trust or whether it's a community trust, and see what they may have on offer. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to have you, even as a volunteer in something that's not directly in contact with COVID-19.
I think it's also worth well, two things I would add to that. One is look at possibly signing up to your local trust bank. So bank is like an opportunity to do some flexible shifts. So potentially you could do some part-time work around your studies, which might be quite useful. And the other thing is don't discount how useful work experience in social care can be when it comes to looking to go into nursing. So potentially have a look at local care homes, or I mean, depending on how old you are and what sort of access you've got to transport, even domiciliary care can sometimes, you know, provide a really good opportunity to get those basic foundation skills and knowledge around providing care to people.
Yeah, very much so.
Great, thank you. And while we're on the subject of work experience, I think we did touch on it slightly earlier, but Emily asked, is work experience essential for nursing?
I wouldn't say it's essential, but I would say it is almost essential. I think you really do need to have a good idea of what you're going to be doing. And I think when you come to putting your application in, when you are saying, you know, I'm really wanting to be X, Y, and Z, nursing, midwifery, whatever, you know, if you haven't really got a good grounding knowledge of what you're going to go into, it's more difficult to actually progress through the application phase. And if you're actually having an interview as well, if you don't do voluntary work, or don't do some work experience, or have some idea, then I think it's very hard for you to really sell yourself in an interview, because I think, you know, you haven't really got that greater understanding. So I would say it's not an essential, but I think it's almost an essential. I would totally recommend it. It raises you above other people who haven't.
Great, thanks, Jill. And Rob, did you have anything to add on to that?
No, I agree. I think it's about considering how you compare to other applicants, really. And as I said earlier, it's something about, you know, if organisations are going to invest in you by going through training, recruiting you, then they want a bit of assurance that it's actually the career for you. So having that work experience demonstrates that you've experienced it, and you definitely want to go for a career in that industry.
Great. Thanks. So really great questions, guys. Thanks for asking. We've got one here. Is it best to go into, I don't know if I'm saying this right, neonatal nursing via child nursing or midwifery?
I would say, personally for me, I think you need to go through child nursing. I think because you have to, you know, midwifery will give you a good grounding knowledge, but it's a very different type of knowledge. And I think in a neonatal nurse, you know, environment, you need to be a specialist within that environment. And I think although you will get some experience as working as a midwife, if you are a paediatric trained nurse, then you have got a better, deeper understanding than you have as a midwife. Because obviously every area has their specialism, but I think that's the next step, isn't it? You become a paediatric nurse, and then you then go on and do your neonatal nurse training. And again, there's many roles that you can go within there as well. But I would say get your basic nurse training under your belt, and then you can, you know, you can go on to midwifery after that. You can go wherever you want to, but I think get your basic nurse training under your belt.
Great, thanks. And I hope that has helped. We've got another one. Is it better to go to university or do an apprenticeship as a midwife?
I can't speak for the midwifery apprenticeship because we don't do it at the moment. At the end of the day, they're both going to be the same courses, aren't they? They're both going to cover exactly what each covers. So you're going to be able to come out as a really highly qualified midwife, you know, as a practitioner, whichever route you go down. If you go to university, you've got the fees, and as an apprenticeship, we haven't got the fees, have you? You're being paid, so you earn while you learn. So personally for me, I think either way is as good because it's the same course. It's just longer as an apprentice.
And I guess, sorry, Rob, you go.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, it's you know, whatever career you're looking at, there are pros and cons of going down the apprenticeship route and going to a sort of direct university route without working. I guess the one thing I would say around health programs is that pretty much all of the health related degrees involve some kind of placement activity or work related learning, which in essence is what an apprenticeship is anyway. I guess the only difficulty is how quickly you want to get in. If you want to leave A levels, go straight into a degree, then you're going to get that sort of registered status, you know, possibly a bit quicker than you would if you went directly into the workforce and worked your way up. So yeah, it depends on how quickly you want to do it, but also it's what your attitude towards sort of student loans are, and you know, there's so many things to consider. You know, my role is to advocate apprenticeships for everyone, so if it was me, I'd say definitely apprenticeships, but you're going to need to consider your own situation, I guess.
Yeah, great point. And remember, guys, you know, don't compare yourself to your friends. It's all about you as an individual and making that right decision for you. But, you know, that's why we're here to support you with making that decision. Yeah, great questions. We've got another one. How do you find your local trusts? Rob mentioned this earlier. Do you just search up the local trusts near your region?
So I'm going to put a web link in response to that. So there's a really good website which lists all of the sustainability and transformation partnerships across the country, and that STP is, you know, in a very crude term, is like a miniature area which contains all of the health organisations that work in that area, with the aim of them working together more closely. But that will list all of the trusts, so you can have a little look. If you have a look down the side, have a look at the STP area that looks familiar to you. It's normally done on sort of a county level, or, you know, so you might have North Central London or North East London, you'll know roughly where you are. So that's a good place to look at all of the trusts. If you're looking to find out what trust your local hospital sits in, you can just Google that hospital and go to their website, and it'll say what trust it is. Where you potentially miss out it by doing that is you might not be able to see clearly the community trust or the mental health trust, because they're not always as visible as a hospital, because they might not have that visible estate. So I'll share that web link in the Q&A box in response to that question.
Great, thanks, Rob. And I know, Rob, you've got to head off soon.
Yeah.
Please do so. If we get any more questions, we'll send them over. But thanks very much for your time today. Also, Jill, I'd like to just come back to you in terms of, you know, what you look for in candidates. So we've touched on a little bit on what students can do to, you know, make themselves stand out. But what are the other areas, and what things do you specifically look for?
I think the first thing we look for, obviously, is an application form that is well filled out, and unfortunately sometimes we have really poorly filled application forms in. So, you know, really check for your English, really check for all the bits and pieces. Be thorough when you do an application form, and write as much as you possibly can about why we would choose you. So, you know, sort of really try to sell yourself, be positive, be enthusiastic, make sure you have the right qualifications, make sure you have looked at the job description, or, you know, looked at what the prerequisites are, and actually cover those as much as you possibly can. So it looks, when we're reading the application form, that you really do know why you're applying for the job, and it's not just a generic application that you're sending out to all and sundry, because we do sometimes get those. And I think with making sure with the application form, a really good supporting statement. So say why you want to do it, and just be positive and be enthusiastic, and try to sort of really, as I said, sell yourself in that, and therefore you'll then go on to interview. And I think with interview, you come in with a smile, you know, come in with a real positive attitude. Why do you want to be a nurse? Tell them why you want to be a nurse with a smile. Look at all the positives, what you want to do, how maybe you want to progress in the future, you know. And we want people who come in, as I said, really with a happy, you know, disposition, you know, who look as if they're really wanting this role as well, and wanting to actually undertake the training, and just have a positive attitude when you come in. Good sort of body language as well, eye to eye contact, and just smile. And I think if you do that, and, you know, with a good supporting statement, and you really state your case, you will do really, really well.
That's great. Great advice, Jill. And for those of you that perhaps have been on some of our sessions beforehand, you know, you're probably starting to hear familiar things, you know, positive outlook, the way you present yourself, eye contact, you know. So no matter what you are applying for, all of those appeal. And I guess, Jill, so work experience has been quite a big worry, you know, students worry that they haven't been able to get any work experience with obviously what's going on. But I guess if, you know, if you were to see that they had, you know, taken part in sessions like this, or, you know, anything that they had done outside of school, what would that show to you? What would that mean?
It would mean that they're committed. And I think anything where you say, I've researched this, or I read something about this, and I thought that was a really, really interesting, really, really wanted to get some work experience, but maybe couldn't, or I've done this, this and this. You know, I've looked after my nan, you know, she's been really positive, and I've sort of discussed these things with the district nurses and found out more, thought it was really, really an exciting job, or very, very interesting, and you know, look to see how my nan was progressing. I think it's showing that you've actually looked outside what you're doing and thinking, this is what nursing is, and showing that actually you have got, even although it might not be masses of experience, there will be some experience that you can say, I have an understanding of what nursing's all about, and, you know, and say, well, I have tried, or I spent some time in the doctor's surgery, I worked as an assistant behind the counter. You know, there's many ways that you can actually gain some experience, and just show the positivity of doing that.
That's great. And I guess, yeah, you know, if you can't physically go out and do anything at the moment, as you said, it's showing and reiterating what you do within your family, you know, caring for a loved one. So, you know, remember, students, don't think that it's irrelevant, because it's probably very valuable and it will help you to stand out.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, that's great. And we've just seen another question come in. They say, is the majority of nursing courses clinical slash practical? So I guess, how does it work in terms of, you know, all the practicalities around it? How much of the practical work is within the course?
It's a mixture of, that's quite a difficult question to ask, because at the end of the day, as far as apprentices go, our apprentices work in base. So they're working as healthcare assistants. So they're getting lots of clinical expertise. So they're getting the clinical knowledge that they're learning academically, and they're transferring that into practice. So they're doing that as HCAs. They then go out on placement, so they then extend their knowledge. So they're getting a mixture of, you know, sort of proficiencies, clinical knowledge-based information being given to them as well. So it is a very much a mix. So you need to have that knowledge to underpin what you're doing practically. So you need to be able to have your academic work, which looks at maybe sort of, I don't know, taking a blood pressure. So you're taking a blood pressure. It's easy to just go and take a blood pressure, especially if it's a non-manual, it's a manual one that just does it for, you know, by itself. But you need to know why you're taking it. You need to know everything about the pharma, you know, the physiology of taking it and what's normal and abnormal. So therefore you have to have a mixture of both.
Yeah, and I guess, as you say, it's, you know, putting what you learn in the lectures, putting it into practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, great, thank you. I've got one question for myself, actually, and guys, if you do have any further questions, please do ask. We've just got about 5 minutes or so. Yeah, Jill, so I guess if you had your time again, if you were in sixth form and now obviously looking at the apprenticeship routes that there are, would you choose the apprenticeship route, or would you still go down the university route?
I think the apprenticeship route.
Yeah.
Because we got, when I did mine, I got paid a bursary, and it was £4,000 or £5,000 a year. And I think I looking at how good the apprenticeships are these days, you know, you earn where you learn. You don't, and obviously not having any bursaries now, you know, you're going to come out with a lot of money that you're going to have to pay back. And I think that's a huge, I don't know, something it's a huge negative to go on your shoulders, really, isn't it, to start your career off. And I think if I had that my time again, and if that was offered to me, I would definitely go down the apprenticeship route. It's slightly longer, but I think it's very varied as well, and I think it gives you just as good training, but in a different way. And you're being paid. What more could you want?
Yeah, exactly. No, thanks. That's really great to hear. And I guess you know, just to reiterate, as you said, you know, it might be a little bit longer, but having that thorough training will really help you if you know, want to go into something different. And I think that's what's so great about here speaking to different people from the NHS, is that, you know, you're sort of in it for life, really. You can start off as within one area and then go over to another. So I hope, yeah, no, that's great. I found that really interesting to hear. Does anyone else have any questions before we wrap up? But it's been great hearing Jill's background and her experience into the NHS. So I hope this has helped you guys.
Can I just say something as well? Because obviously we're talking all at the moment, we discussed like the band 5, 6 and 7 levels, but you know, there is so much progression. You can go up and obviously you can be head of clinical services, you can be acting director, you know, there are so many options that you can, you know, sort of really and truly sort of fly up high and earn very good money if you really want to, you know, because the options are there for you. Not everybody wants to do that, but some people do like management, some people like corporate.
Great, good point. We've just had another question come in. Can you be a nurse consultant with an apprenticeship? Yes,
because once you have your qualification, you have your qualifications. So what you do after that, because at the end of the day, you'll become a registered nurse on the NMC website. So you will actually have a PIN, which is what we all have, and we guard it with our life. I can say that much because you've worked so hard to keep it. And at the end of the day, you have a PIN. It doesn't matter where you've got your training from, because it's been NMC ratified, reviewed, and actually accepted. So once you've got your PIN, you can go on and do whatever you want.
And we've got a question from Tracy. This might be quite specific to the university, but she says, do universities look at and respect retakes? She's currently retaking her A-levels. What I would say to that, Tracy, is that I guess it depends on the university that you're applying for, but as long as you have the needed requirements, it shouldn't be a problem that you've had to retake A-levels. So thanks, guys. Thanks for all the questions. So yeah, that went so quickly. It's been great, Jill, chatting to you. And
No problem.
It'll be great, guys, if you do feel free to put in the chat box sort of, any key takeaways. Oh, Nana had a question. That's fine, Nana, if you want to type your question and we can come to you. Oh, here we are. Is it possible to go from midwifery to obstetrics?
What does she mean by that? Because in midwifery you work with obstetricians. So if you want to be an obstetrician, you go down the doctor route. Okay,
I hope that's helped, Nana. Great. So, Charlie, I learned a lot from this webinar. That's great to hear. So, do type away, guys. And just to wrap up, so yeah, thanks so much, Jill. That's been really really interesting to hear your story and your advice for students.
Good.
And if you guys do have any further questions, as always, you can get in touch with us. You can email us at student@pathwayctm, and if there's anything further for Jill or Rob, do get in touch with us, and I'm sure we would be able to follow up with them.
Absolutely.
And we do appreciate that students are signing into our daily webinars more than once within the week, which is great. So we're actually running a competition. So you guys, if you do join our webinars throughout the week and give us a follow on Instagram, there are some prizes up for grabs. So do give us a follow with Pathway@CTM on Instagram. And yeah, let's see if there's a few more people have said something in the chat box. Really interactive webinar. Thank you very much. This has been really super helpful. I have gathered some helpful information. The Q&A was really helpful. Thank you. So that's great to hear, guys. And we appreciate you joining on and joining us for 45 minutes of your time today. So yeah, thank you, Jill.
No problem.
Thank you everyone for logging on. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you soon.
Good luck with your future, guys. Good luck. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.